is where you willfully mislead somebody, knowing that what you're saying is factually incorrect.
I think I lie very well for my profession.
What does a liar look like? What does a psychopath look like?
I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips.
Bradford, how are you?
I'm better now, thanks, Steve. I was a little bit under the weather last week, and we seem to have resolved what I can only put down to is maybe an ageing problem, or, as I said to you, that perhaps an overuse problem.
Well, I don't think we need to go into too much detail,
No,
but it's good that you're back on deck. We missed you.
Thank you. Yes.
So let's just quickly recap from our last session, our last podcast. There are 3 callers come in. One,
this is the last one that you and I did, not the special one.
The special one
Maury
we did with Maury, our producer.
And
one of the inquiries was I made a mention about my old boss said when you go to a crime scene, keep your hands in your pocket. What did that mean? And that was what the caller referred to. So one of the last things you want to ever do in a crime scene is contaminate it. And because the crime scene, as we have been speaking about in the anatomy of a murder, is one of the most important parts. And we call this Lockhardt's theory of transfer. So, and what that is, and they drum that into you at detective training school, every trace, every contact leaves its trace. So that means if you and I were to get up out of this room and leave, there would be evidence that you and I have been here. So it could be...
What, all my food wrappers?
Could be your fibres from your jacket you're wearing, hair, fingerprints.
No hair.
Well, maybe not so much hair with you, but fingerprints. You've been drinking coffee, so there could be DNA on the rim of the cup. And, of course, you would take away from this room evidence that you might have been here, like carpet fibres underneath your shoes. And, of course, as you know now, they can match. So, it puts an offender at the scene. Now, it doesn't always prove that they actually committed a particular act, but it can put them in the scene, especially during an interview if they've denied being there.
Yeah.
So it's all, corroborative evidence. And as you know in a prosecution, that's what we try to do, build a case.
So just on that, I've often seen, and of course, most of my experience of crime is, of course, movies and television shows, and dramatic depictions. I see criminals wiping down surfaces, and I've scrubbed a pot sometimes, like 50, for about 5 minutes to get it clean.
Sounds like obsessive compulsive disorder, but that's another show.
Or maybe I shouldn't eat so much gravy, but they seem to just do this kind of cursory wipe. They touch that thing and they wipe that. Does that get rid of fingerprints?
Well, it can smudge them. But once again, depends on the surface. And, a lot of the time, you think about it. If you were to walk into a house, you've probably touched the door handle, you've probably picked up a glass, you've probably touched some other device. Now, not all surfaces are the best for lifting off fingerprints. I remember I worked on fraud and we lifted fingerprints using an anhydrous solution off a cheque. Right. And they were perfect. So a lot of people think, oh, geez, how's it possible to leave a fingerprint on paper? But it's possible. And they've also lifted fingerprints off a body, believe it or not. Of course, varying success rates.
Did you? And some people might not get this reference, but when you lifted the prints off the cheque, did it take 3 to 5 days to clear?
No, not quite. But of course, as we now know, no one uses checks anymore.
No.
But just getting back to the crime scene, keeping your hands in your pocket, the last thing you want is to have a detective's or uniform or non-uniform members' prints. Because sometimes you can have lots of prints in a particular area.
A famous case in Victoria, wasn't there?
Yeah, so there was a well-known case here, the murder of Carmen Chan, a young girl. Her parents were in Doncaster away, and the Carmen Chan was abducted. And for some reason unknown, they decided to set up a crime command post inside the house where she was abducted from. Now, you don't have to be a brilliant scholar to work out that's not a good move.
No.
And, of course, they found fingerprints of a detective who was there on a phone. Now, I mean, you don't know whether or not the abductor could have used the phone, but that's irrelevant. The issue is that scene should be kept in what we call in situ. And any exhibits. And that was, by the way, leads into the second call we had about what does in situ mean. You've heard that term before?
I've heard the term before, yes.
So basically, insofar as crime scene and investigation, it's actually leaving the scene or an exhibit as it is in its original state or form. And, it's without going too much, it's basically leaving it like a weapon in the same position. I remember I was contacted by the AFP to fly up to Canberra and to do a behavioural analysis interview and polygraph test on a suspect in relation to a murder of an elderly lady. And a large sum of money was stolen. And anyway, they were showing me the crime scene photos. And the deceased, the lady, was in a room and her hands, her mouth was gaffer taped and her hands were bound behind her back. And I'm looking through the scene and I see a knife. And I'm thinking, what's the situation on the knife? Now, if that was a scene, as I arrived, I'd be thinking, okay, well, that could have fingerprints, could be, the offender's fingerprints, who knows? But it turned out it was the husband who had also been restrained in another room. He eventually freed himself because he was tied up as well, went to the room where his wife was, saw that she was bound and had a knife to cut the tape. And so that looked out of place, but there was a perfectly valid explanation.
Right.
And, of course, the last thing you want to do is contaminate a crime scene.
Yep.
One of the other questions we're asked about what a thrill kill is, for those that don't know. Thrill kill is most homicides usually have some particular motive, revenge, lust, greed, anger, contempt, whatever the reason or the motive may be. But usually with a thrill kill, the motive is somewhat more sinister, and that is for the purpose of killing.
Yeah.
For no other reason, no other purpose, but to, derive some degree of pleasure. And, I remember having dinner with a FBI profiler once. And, I thought in 14 years of police work, I'd seen everything that one human could do to another. And then I was listening to some of her stories and, some of the cases where, I won't go into too much detail, but, a particular serial killer would abduct his victims and strangle, then resuscitate, so he could have power of control over who lives and who dies, and then relive the experience. So, that's the thing about that is there was no nexus or connection between the offender and the victim.
That's gross.
So, and by the way, they're the hardest types of homicides you'll have to solve because they're very difficult finding a connection.
Yeah. So, I think too, in terms of thrill kill, is it correct that it's not absolutely every time, but a lot of serial killers start out on animals?
Yeah, they call that the homicide triad, where there'll be a progression of behaviour starting small and building up. So anything from setting fire to objects, to torturing animals, cats and pets and whatnot, and then it will always invariably escalate over a period of time. And there's a fair bit of scientific study and research and proof, validated proof that that's the case. And of course, the other side of that is if a serial killer is allowed to get away, they become more calculating and they and also feel they're
like AI, aren't they?
Yeah. And feel like that they they have a degree of invincibility.
Yeah.
And in some cases, and we've seen this in Victoria, the postcard bandit, they will toy with the police who are investigating, and postcard bandit was actually sending postcards to detectives from different localities.
It's kind of sweet too.
Well, yeah, no, but but there's a whole new degree of confidence. And of course, and a lot of the serial killers, in the States, will also be glued to the media because the media follows the story, and sometimes a fact-finding mission for the killer.
Yeah, so it's. It's my theory then about how some dogs take out contracts on cats. No.
Sometimes I think we're talking about two different subjects.
Yeah, I have two jobs here, and one of them is to investigate the
light. So I'm the dark guy, and you're the light guy.
I am the light. Yeah, there you go.
So so they were the three calls that callers brought up. So let's just recap what we spoke about in the last episode about the anatomy. You had a number of indicators and facts from the crime scene.
Yep.
So just to refresh our listeners' memory, let's just go through the scenario.
Okay, so the body was this is a scenario, and the location. There's a narrow service laneway behind a mixed-use strip in Collingwood Fitzroy type territory, which is in the suburbs of Melbourne. Previously working class, now upper gentrified. Cafes, small warehouses, apartments, bars. The time the victim was discovered at about 6:10 a.m. by a cafe delivery driver setting up for the morning, likely killed sometime between 11:30 and 1:30 a.m. Now, that would be based on the temperature of the body?
Well, yes or no. We would look at phone calls that may have been received or emanated from the victim's phone.
Yep.
And if we knew who the suspect is or was or are, could be more than one, we'd also be not monitoring, but we would be doing checks to see where they were. I mean, you can triangulate location, but like I mentioned last week, doing temperature countbacks have been notoriously inaccurate because don't forget that in this case the deceased was found outside.
Yeah.
Temperatures can affect
it's Melbourne. Melbourne. It could be, 4 different temperatures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that in itself is not a reliable indicator, but of course, as you mentioned, delivery van drivers, people in the area, we'd be looking at CCTV footage.
When a police patrol, goes out, say the van goes out or something like that, do they log? We went down such and such street at 12 a.m. And so that you could go to them and say, did you see anything suspicious?
They don't log. Uniform or a divisional van, and I'm talking about here in Victoria, Australia, what would happen is you have what they call a running sheet.
Right.
And everyone you pull over, everyone you speak to, everyone you arrest or charge, every car you pull over, you put the driver's details, the registration, the details of the car, rah. So they don't record every single street they go down, but every intercept or stop, traffic infringement, and of course you are tasked to jobs along the way. So that is all recorded as well.
Right.
So everything that's said on radio. So, usually, let me use the example. When I was in Brunswick, we'd have a predefined locality that we had to stay within. And you would have to maintain a valid running sheet with all those communications.
So you, as a detective, could go and check
that's a little bit different.
Uniform.
Detective,
later, check with the uniform
correct.
and just go. Did you see somebody stabbing somebody in the street? No, we did not. We would have maybe done something about it.
Well, the only way that would happen is if the van was actually in a position where they could see that. Of course, people don't tend to do that while a uniformed van or uniformed personnel are there.
Yeah. Okay, so the victim, male, 27, so we know a bit about him.
Yep.
Dressed well but not flashy. Yeah, he's a bit like you. Expensive sneakers, dark jeans, black jacket, one designer watch, no wallet visible. Phone found nearby but damaged. Which
now that is it damaged because the offender didn't want the victim to call the ambulance or police, or was there a scuffle? It fell out and broke in the process.
Yeah,
there could be a number of reasons.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Has a low level public profile. So clearly they've worked out who he is. He's not a major gangland figure, but someone with possible links to organised crime circles through debt collection, nightclub security, luxury car movement, or errand work. So
right there, we've got a number of investigative leads to follow up.
Yeah.
Just knowing his background. Of course, his background will be vetted as opposed to his associates.
Right.
Looking for motive.
Yeah. Well, I think over the past 20 years in, or even the past 30 years in Victoria, some nightclub security have been targeted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The scene of bodies found on the ground beside a roller door in the lane. He has multiple apparent gunshot wounds, but there's no firearm at the scene. A small amount of blood pooling under the torso, plus some splatter on the roller door and a nearby. Oh, sorry for that. A few cartridge cases located nearby, but not in a neat cluster. Do cartridge cases signify an automatic weapon? Because a revolver doesn't eject. Is that right?
So, correct. A revolver doesn't eject. Well, that's not true. It could be semi-automatic.
Right.
So the old Smith & Wesson revolvers, the casing would remain in the chamber, but a lot of semi-automatics will eject the spent cartridge or shell.
Right.
So the projectile, so as you know, you've got, now I'm not a big ballistics expert, but what I can tell you is you've got the cartridge with the gunpowder,
Yeah.
the firing pin, and the projectile.
Yep.
So, of course, the firing, the hammer activates the primer. The primer, basically, gun shot powder explodes, which projects the bullet. Now, there's rifling.
So just for the listeners, if you're not familiar with it, if you imagine an egg cup with an egg in it, right? The egg sits in it. That's the projectile.
The egg, yeah.
Right, and the egg cup is the cartridge. And the egg's going to be projected out of the egg cup. The egg cup will remain, and the egg is the projectile.
Oh, dear. I've never actually heard it that way, but yes, that is probably the worst analogy I've ever heard, but yeah.
Well, my other one was there was a baby in a pram.
No, better the egg.
Okay.
Better the egg. Okay. So, of course, as the projectile, the bullet, goes to, so let's use a rifle. There's spiraling.
Yes.
And, of course, you can obtain, and this is what happens during autopsies or other shootings, and you've got the shell, so you can look at the marks on the projectile. Yeah. And, of course, it depends. If it's lead, like we used to have hollow points, and what would happen is that it would have copper and the lead would balloon out on impact. So it'd be a smaller hole on the inside.
Projectile.
The projectile. Sorry. Yeah, and so it would balloon. And it was meant or built primarily for stopping power.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Whereas a high velocity without that would just, in effect, the bullet would go straight through the victim.
Yeah.
And of course, if that was retrieved, you can match, depends on the quality of the bullet, the rifling. So if you can seize the firearm that was used, you do have, I mean, once again, I'm not a ballistics expert, but you can actually look for similarities in match. That's how sometimes they can look at the projectile and work out what weapon was used to fire it, take out a search warrant, go through the house, and then look for that particular weapon.
Is it too far-fetched if you found all the fragments of a hollow point, you could put it back together?
Well, see, from what I've seen, when they shot into silicon and models, it does peel back. So it's quite what's the word?
Destroyed.
Destroyed. That question I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. I don't know whether or not there would be anything that they could pick up from that.
Right.
Especially rifling patterns or anything on the projectile, because and let's not forget too, when it enters the body, it changes its shape because the lead peels back to the copper, where it opens up. So I'm not I'm not a ballistics expert, so I'm not too sure about that one.
Okay, all right. Immediate impression, first glance, it looks like a targeted shooting rather than a random killing. So not a thrill kill. Backstory: the victim had spent the evening moving between, and so somebody's found this out already. A bar in the inner north, a short meeting outside another venue, a burst of calls, messages just before midnight. Then he's ended up in the laneway.
Now, I'm going to stop you there. Something you said that pricked my ears up. You said it looks like a potential an associate type thing.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm not prepared to call it that yet for a number of reasons, but let's get back to that. Keep going.
Okay. So to recap, a 27-year-old man with a possible organised crime association is found shot dead in a Collingwood laneway just after dawn. He appears to have been killed by gunfire at close range sometime overnight. There is no weapon at the scene, no obvious robbery, and early indications suggest he was in the laneway to meet somebody. Okay. Now, where did we get to on the first one?
So the first one is we looked. I spoke about the crime scene. What sort of evidence you can obtain from a crime scene, which is the initial action at a crime scene. So looking for any connection between the offender or offenders and the victim, and any forensic, ballistic, any type of evidence that could connect a potential offender to.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure. What the relevance of this is, but this is the victim's clothing and possessions: dark jeans, black T-shirt, open dark overshirt or lightweight jacket, expensive sneakers, watch, chain around the neck. Of course, what criminal doesn't wear a chain?
Depends.
Mobile phone found cracked, keys, some cash.
Do you know, let me explain why what he's wearing is important.
Yep.
It's very important. And that is because, let's just say you've got a potential suspect and you take it a warrant, the suspect's place. We'd also be looking for any evidence that that person, the victim, was at the offender's place.
Right.
Because you don't know what happened leading up to this.
Yeah.
So the clothing, and remember how I talked about Lockhardt's theory of transfer, there could be trace evidence on the victim's clothing.
Yeah.
That and by the way, I mean, I know we heard shots, but in some cases the victim may have been shot elsewhere and the body dumped. So it may not seem important, but a lot of times in these type of investigations, it may not seem important.
Yeah.
But then something falls into place, something clicks,
Right.
and then it is very important.
Okay, so and that could then hark back to the fact that there wasn't a lot of blood pooling under the body. Is it these? So I believe that is the blood tends to stop once the heart stops. Is that it?
Well, it depends on the position of the deceased, because if you've got an entry wound and he's laying on his stomach, blood's going to keep coming out even if his heart has stopped.
Okay.
So, I mean, the theory is if your heart stopped. I mean, you think about it. If I'm standing on a ladder and my foot is dangling off the end of the ladder and I cut my foot, I'm still alive. Yes, I mean, gravity is also going together with my heart rate and all that type of thing. So, in and of itself, we just by the way too, we don't know whether or not potential offenders' blood may be at the scene as well. I mean, we would be looking for defensive wounds. Let's just say, and these are assumptions, right? Let's not forget that. I can go to a crime scene. I can tell you what I think may have happened, but I could be way out. Yeah. So, I mean, scientific evidence often doesn't lie. People do, but scientific evidence doesn't. So, what potentially we would be looking for is defensive wounds. You know what they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just say...
Well, the defensive wounds, so that if somebody's being stabbed, they put their hand up and they get stabbed in the hand.
Yeah. Or you could, let's just say the gunman was pointing a gun at you and you grabbed the barrel and tried to point it off direction. Yeah. But at the same time he fired, you might have gunshot residue on your hands, which would indicate that... two things. One is obviously it was discharged at close range because in some cases you'll have gunshot burns at point blank.
Do people have gunshot wounds in their hands then from just trying to ward people off?
Well, depends on whether or not it's been discharged in their direction, because if you've ever watched under high-speed photography, somebody shooting, the gunshot residue will fly out in like all over.
Yeah.
And to give an example, I remember usually in a police shooting, it's overseen by the homicide squad and by ethic or professional standards.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I'll do is take your firearm and do gunshot residue swabs of your hand to see whether, obviously check your weapon to see if anything's been discharged, but also check to see if you've got any gunshot residue on your hands. If you don't, well then, and your rounds haven't been spent, then obviously you haven't.
Yeah. Okay, so where were we at?
So you finished talking about the clothes?
The mobile phone found cracked and about a metre from the body. Keys, some cash. So this would indicate that it's not a robbery?
Yeah. Well, depends on how much cash.
Yeah, because I got in trouble last time from making all these assumptions. So I'm very, very careful now.
Well, now you're actually thinking the way I want you to think.
Yeah. Okay. No obvious wallet visible on first glance. But
see, just on that point, he may not have taken his wallet with him. The wallet could be in the car.
He may not have a wallet.
Correct.
A lot of people I knew used to have a money clip.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
And it was as one person once said to me, "Why carry ID? It just identifies you." No firearm, no drugs plainly visible. So I didn't design this scenario myself.
Yep. It's a good scenario.
I'm just wondering. Okay, so nearby physical clues, fresh tyre marks. Okay.
Important.
Yeah,
but they may not be connected to the murder. They could have been there before the murder.
Yeah, and there's high traffic there. Would there be possibly hundreds of tyre marks?
Well, yeah. I mean, are we talking in mud? Are we talking in grass? Bitumen doesn't give us a lot of material to work with.
I believe it was a cobblestone lane.
Yep.
Cigarette butts. Several old butts are in the lane.
Important,
but
for
one near the
potential
body.
DNA.
One near the body looks fresher.
Right.
That may mean nothing at all. I should have got a sponsor actually for this and just said it's Peter Stuyvesant.
Maybe they don't want to be associated with a murder, but go on.
And smoking kills.
As a marketer or a PR person, you're a great comedian.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're not all that good. Drink container, takeaway coffee cup, and a crushed energy drink and a takeaway coffee cup and a crushed enemy.
Easy for you to say.
Yes, a crushed energy drink are nearby, but in an inner city laneway, they may be rubbish unrelated to the murder. A security gate.
But you would still seize them, and the reason you would seize them is because they may.
And you get 5 cents back on the 10 cents. So, coppers got to make a bit of dough. Security gate, a side pedestrian gate to the apartment building, appears closed but not fully latched. That doesn't seem significant to me.
No. But I'll tell you why, with my mind, that could be important. Did somebody leave that gate unlatched for the killer to meet the victim?
Yeah.
Was it pre-planned? We don't know this.
No, which is also, if you followed Underbelly, there was other stories, crime stories of that ilk.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who
secondary players.
Yeah, people who you might have thought were your mates ultimately weren't your mates. Mm-hmm. Footwear marks, there may be partial shoe impressions in dusty patches near the wall, but the lane is heavily trafficked enough that this is uncertain. All right, that's a bit of a furphy. This gives realism a homicide scene is never neat. Yeah?
I think the neatest homicide scenes would be poison scenes.
Yeah. Have you attended one of those?
A poison? No, I have not.
Right. But you've been to gunshot?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay.
And they are very messy. I went to one and it was quite horrific, to be honest. And luckily the offender handed himself in. to the police station. He'd just walked into Brunswick Police Station while I was working night shift and said, "I've just killed my wife." And, of course, I had to go down to the crime scene to establish that was, in case, the truth. And, of course, his wife had been murdered.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, we don't know how horrific we should be, so we'll leave it at that. Okay, this might be important. This is because we're getting into the witnesses now.
Well, before we get into the witnesses, investigating a homicide is not that easy, right? Let's go back to the crime scene.
Right.
So the initial actual crime scene, so you'd have a homicide team come out or crew come out, and of course people would be tasked with different issues. So you'd be looking around looking for CCTV cameras that could hold valuable footage. So there'd be someone responsible for looking into that. Of course, then the body would have to be removed after everything's been photographed and videoed in situ. And once forensics have allowed the body to be moved, then you would have a member go to the coroner's court who would actually have to be present during the autopsy. Now, the autopsy, as you know...
The member or the coroner?
No, police member, the detective.
Oh, nice.
Or a detective, for the purpose of continuity.
What are they like?
What?
Autopsies?
I've been to a couple. Look, you've got to put yourself in the position as to why we have why an autopsy is conducted to determine. And it's quite a detailed process. They'll do toxicology testing. They'll be, analysing what caused the death, all that type of thing. So it can be. You're dealing with human beings who've been murdered. So I remember going to an autopsy of a young 15-year-old girl, and I remember when the pathologist opened up her stomach, you could still see undigested twisties. But you've got to look at it from the perspective from criminal investigation. There's a very valid reason. And then, of course, if there's sexual activity, there'll be evidence maybe of DNA, seminal fluid, semen, whatever. And then you'd be looking for vaginal scarring, tears of bruise. It depends on what the case is, of course. Yeah. But just bear in mind that there's a very good reason, because toxicology would determine whether there's drugs or alcohol or other substances in them. Medical, like psychiatric, drugs for schizophrenia or whatever.
So if you've got to be present, right? Say, as you said, a member's got to be present for the autopsy. Yep. So how long could that be?
From my last memories, it was, it could be, an hour, thereabouts. And of course then the forensic pathologist would have to do a report and so on, which is then, part of the police brief.
Keep your bloody hands in your pocket there too, wouldn't you?
Well, I remember my first autopsy I saw was when I was, where were we? In the academy. And believe it or not, it used to be right at the front of the VPC. You know where the Victoria Police Centre is in Flinders Street?
I
can't remember the number now.
I was interviewed there once.
Once.
Just once.
Anyway, so back in those days, they did not have like the clinical format that you've got now. So you'll stay in another room. There's glass partitions. It's quite soundproof. Yeah. But I remember when I went there, and a lot of my graduate squad mates went there, and we were literally standing around the table, and like all the emotions, the smells, and the saw. And I remember the pathologist getting this particular saw that can cut through skull to take out the brain, all that sort of stuff. And I remember he put it up against his hand, and it didn't cut. But then as soon as put it to the skull, it cut. Yeah. So, but anyway, Strider saw. Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, so that's that part. And of course, in addition, after you get the autopsy results back, then really, then the real start of the investigation. So then you remember the tyre prints. You'd be getting photos of those. You would be, of course, during the autopsy, they'd see whether or not there's any blood or anything like that from maybe someone else. And, of course, the clothing would be taken down to forensic science laboratory, and they'd be looking for biological trace evidence, potentially from the shooter or the offender or offenders.
That is a striker saw, STRYKER, if you're thinking about buying one for yourself. Well, I think we're getting pretty close to time, and we haven't even. And
we've just finished the initial action at the crime scene. We have not even gone in, and I have several. I hate this term because I know it's so police. Avenues of inquiry. You hear that all the time. A lot of times police talk like robots, they'll talk third person. The offender decamped.
I was proceeding in a westerly direction.
That's right. And it still irritates me these days, not as bad as what it used to be. They'll say, the offender alighted from the vehicle and decamped in a southerly direction. Who talks like that?
I know. And you don't
and especially when they're talking third person, they go, police are looking for, well, what are you?
And it's not alighted, it's a lit. It is, and I've tried to write a joke about this several years ago, simply because I feel that a part of it is humour really works well when it's contrasted with ritual.
Yep.
And one of the more weird rituals is the courtroom, the way people speak in the courtroom, because all the people who are running it have all been schooled in that. They know how to speak.
Like
they know who the boss cocky is in the room. It's all my luds and your wassups and stuff like that. And the coppers tend to pick up a little bit of that speak.
True.
I went to court when I was young. I had a driving offence.
A lot of things are seeping out here about your background, which give me a lot of information from my profile that I'm building on you.
I got my licence in the 70s. I wore a suit. I got done for drink driving because it was it wasn't mandatory, but we all did it, and I borrowed a suit.
Appearance?
For my court appearance. And I was a very slim man back in those days, and I borrowed a suit from a mate of mine that had 18-inch flares on the bottom. And I went to Aperen Mags Court, and I went outside and I smoked, waiting for my case, and walked up and down in the wind, flapping like a yacht. And subsequently, 5 other guys wore that same suit to that same court.
That could be a bad omen.
Well, the last person to wear it was the original owner of the suit, and they threw the book at him, and we always reckon
the suit. It was the suit.
The magistrate recognised the suit and thought he was a recidivist.
What colour was it? Yellow.
It was really, really tight black and white check suit. Yeah,
that was all the rage back then. Yeah.
Well, I won't say his name. I'll say his first name, Matt. Matt's always been a very well-dressed person. It was not not
just for his court appearances.
Well, no, because we all did it because it was just we didn't understand the gravity of it at the time. Anyway, I'm not the person I was.
Yes, you don't have to convince me. I believe you. Okay, so we have to sadly wrap it up, but I think next podcast we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of looking at known associates, looking at potential motives, together with an investigative matrix on how this should be looked at.
An investigative matrix. I look forward to it, Steve. Have a great week.
Likewise.
Same to you next week. Cheers.
Good on you. Bye.
Bye. I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips.